Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey Podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey Podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoltmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoltmeister, and of course, as usual, we have the Tom Olson.
I think that's me, I hope so.
That's him, and we're back for another podcast, and we're taking a little unique turn here as Tom is counting his paper. And
this is money, Jared.
It's paper.
I'm
a
millionaire. Just so you
Actually,
know.
it's more than that.
This is definitely more than $1 million.
Yeah.
I've got some Venezuelan boulevard here, Jared. I just want to let everybody know this is a stack. I mean, this is a stack drug dealers just dream of.
Yeah. He's been pulling this out at the local stores.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think?
Flashing around.
5,000.
Dropping some Boulevard here.
There's some 5,000 Boulevard. 5,000 Boulevard. Oh, we got some 10,000s.
Yeah.
Some 10,000s. We got some 20,000s. We got some 100,000s. I mean, we've got
How do you feel holding that?
I mean, when I was a kid, there was this show, and it was Richie Rich. You remember Richie Rich?
Absolutely. Macaulay Culkin was on.
Oh,
the
man.
cartoon or that one?
Richie Rich.
Yeah.
Then there was another show, cartoon. This really dates me, right? DuckTales.
Oh, yeah.
You remember DuckTales?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Where the ducks would literally swim in the gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about today.
We're swimming in Boulevard.
Everybody that listens to this podcast is going to be rich.
Hey, that's where people want to go.
I can make any of you guys rich right now. Just come here, and I'll give you some Boulevard.
2701 West 45th Avenue. There you go.
Yep. So we've got a story that's behind this. It's going to be a little bit of a different podcast. I know we talk about active turnkey, and that's a lot of what we talk about, but we want our listeners to be the most educated. We really do want you to be successful. We want you to have wealth. And at this last week, we actually had a free-for-all meeting here. We do it once a year, and I'm gonna tell you guys to put it on your calendars now, okay? Because next year is already ready to go. So put this on your calendars right now, September 7 through 9. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It is the Thursday, Friday, Saturday right after Labor Day, so you can't forget about it. It's right after Labor Day. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right after Labor Day, 2023. We're gonna have an event called the Real Estate Free for All, and we're gonna talk about turnkey. We're gonna talk about lending. We're gonna talk about building your wealth, but we're also gonna talk about some other things. And so at this last meeting, I kind of opened up the whole thing with kind of a presentation about why I brought certain people to the meeting and why and how I think about building wealth and because it comes from a lot of different sectors. You know, yes, we build rental portfolios for investors, and we want people to have rental portfolios. I believe that that's a key part of building wealth for many, many people. Maybe it's not for everybody, but I believe that it's for a lot of different people. So I kind of came up with this triangle. And
pyramid, we like to call it.
Pyramid. Yeah, there you go, Jared. I got a pyramid here.
Yeah.
And it's not
ancient.
I'm going to show you my squiggly lines here, but maybe Amelia will show like my slide, and that'll be up there. But I know this is really chicken scratch there, guys. So you see that right there? See that pyramid? Actually, you can see the 20 gazillion over there. I was talking to Amelia, and this $20,000 bill is basically not 20,000. We learned that it was actually 20. I don't know if it's billion, trillion. It's something. But this whole stack of money here, this
fat stack.
All of this stack of money is worth less. This stack is worth less than 1 penny U.S. So that got me thinking, hey, let's tell the story. Let's tell the story about Amelia, who actually helps run our marketing. I promise you, she watches and listens every single one of these. She helps us edit them. She posts them for us. She works for me, and she's from Venezuela. And when she came from Venezuela to the United States, her father gave her this stack. Now, she said that there was a little bit more added to this before she got here, but it was maybe just a little bit bigger than it is now. And at the time, she left the Venezuela when inflation for Venezuela was really getting out of control. And at the time in Venezuela, there were everybody was focused on getting this cash, because cash at that point, like, nobody wanted to use credit cards because they didn't trust the banking system. And if you use a credit card, you know how sometimes you go to a gas station now, even in the United States, you'll see it and it's like, it's 5 cents cheaper if you use cash, right? Have you seen those? I mean, you don't see them very often, but every once in a while you'll see that. And I know now we can't do this with our companies, right? But if you're working with a contractor, for instance, on your own personal house, occasionally those contractors will say, well, if you pay me cash, like I'll do it for less. But in Venezuela at the time, it was like cash was really king. Everybody was moving to cash, and they really wanted this. This is what they wanted. And Amelia said that when she moved here, this much money would have bought her enough groceries for a month in Venezuela. And today, 4 years later, it's worth less than a penny. So this right now wouldn't buy you anything, even in Venezuela. The money in Venezuela today has gone from looking like this to so this had already had, I think she said there was 5 zeros added to this money before this money was already printed, and they've added 5 more zeros. And those 5 more zeros now just have a 20 on them. And they have all the way up to $1 million bill in the new bills, which is like, I don't even know. Like, that's got to be more than like $1 gazillion or something, or $1 gazillion boulevard. I'm not quite sure. But I feel like that story about how bad, inflation can really get. And when we think about United States now, when we complain about 9-10% inflation, maybe we shouldn't really complain too much about it. Maybe it's not the end of the world like we think it is, because we're talking about like hundreds and thousands of percent inflation. And Amelia said it was changing every week. It would go from 1 week being 20 to the next week being like 100. In 1 week it would go up 500%. Inflation. And I kind of felt like maybe let's just kind of take a step back from talking about turnkey rentals and property management and how do we find the right property and how do we look at the right areas, to kind of like look at your whole portfolio and kind of back up and look at your portfolio and maybe just have a little bit of focus on those other parts of your portfolio. So, when I started, when I opened up this week, I talked about a couple things. I said, I believe that this is how most people should build their portfolio. They all need to start with the basic foundation. And that basic foundation is kind of like the things that we invest in ourselves. It's character. It's showing up every day. It's knowing that you're doing the right thing and you're the right person. I had a conversation with my kids this morning, and I said, hey, if you want to attract the right people, if you're going to go and if you're all worried about what kind of spouse you're going to find in your life, yeah, it's good to have a list of those things that you want in them. But the most important thing you can do before you even get started about worrying about that boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever that is to make sure that you yourself are right. So I talked about having a health coach if you need a health coach. Without your health, you don't have anything, right? Maybe you need a spiritual coach. Maybe you need to focus on your spirit. And then also focusing on your money and having a budget and having cash. Those things is kind of like, it's almost preliminary before this pyramid even begins. And you don't ever hit these things until you kind of make those decisions. Nothing ever changes until something changes. And but so once you've done some soul searching and once you've made decisions And he said, hey, I'm going to make some goals. I'm going to create some goals. I'm going to track those goals. I'm going to review those goals. I'm going to make things happen. I'm going to make a difference in my life. Maybe nobody's ever been wealthy in your family. Maybe nobody's ever been able to be a giver. And you said, I'm going to crack those chains. I'm going to break those chains, and I'm going to break out of that, our history of our family being poor and not being able to help other people. But that first thing. So I asked the audience, hey, what's the first baby step? If you've ever listened to Dave Ramsey, and I know there's people that love and hate Dave Ramsey. It's like a lover and hater of him. And I kind of feel like I'm in the middle. I feel like there's some things I think he's the best in the world on. And I think there's some other things where I feel like you can do better with some of the things that he says opposite. But I think he's really good in the foundational. And as you're building your foundation of your wealth, I think he is one of the best. Talking about getting out of debt. I mean, if you're saddled with debt, there's no sense in you talking about buying turnkey rentals. There's no sense in you talking about building or investing into a fund. I mean, you're really just stupid. I mean, it's doing things backwards. Yeah. It's interesting. Crypto has been like a really hot topic over the last couple of years. And whether it's up or whether it's down, it's kind of a hot topic because either people want to love it or people want to hate it. But it's one of these things that you get these 18, 19-year-old kids that get all enthralled with, hey, I can make a gazillion dollars. Like, this is literally what it is. Like, think about it. Like, there's some crypto coins out there that are just like this stack of cash. They're worthless. And they focus on what I call legacy investments. They focus on those things that are kind of like moonshots. They're penny stocks. They're hit the lottery type. And I mean, I don't think anybody would really ever think that the lottery is an investment. But, putting it all on red, you can go to the casino and put it all on red and maybe you make some money. I don't know, but it's not really my thing. Yeah. I know Jared, he kind of
I go
secret.
Black. I put on black.
He puts on black.
Yeah, never red.
But anyways, that first baby step that Dave Ramsey says is you need to save $1,000 and have an emergency account. And why does he say that? He says that because then there's like this little minimum amount of protection. And that's really what that foundation layer of your investment is. Like if you want to start building investments, having that good foundation of protection is so important. Now, what are some of the things that, Jared, you might think of as, if I want to have some protection to protect my wealth, what are some things that I might want to put in place?
Along the same line?
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that you could do a budget. You think along that line? You mean?
Right, budget.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
that's a good. Honestly, it's a good insulator. Helps you understand. The understanding of where your money's going. That's a great thing. I mean, I talked about a burn rate, knowing what your burn rate is. Those are great. But what are some protections that you can put? I think that first protection is that $1,000, before you even thought about doing anything else. Even before you start tackling debt, like he says, get your $1,000. So money, cash. Having cash is a protection in itself.
Life insurance.
Okay, and then secondary is insurance. Those are the main two protectors. The third protector is liquidity. So there are things in which maybe you don't have the cash, but you have access to cash. Maybe you have access to private lenders. You have credit, right? So building your credit is also an insulator. It's a, if you have a good name and things go bad, somebody's going to loan you money, and all these things are a great asset. They really are. And if you try to skip over these things and say, I'm going to, hit red, I'm going to go and buy crypto and I'm going to buy the Venezuela dollar, right? This is all you're doing. You're buying this. And what do you end up getting? Less than a penny. Yeah. Like this is how it ends up. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time, and I even have a guy that spoke, so then I told everybody at the meeting, I said, you're going to hear from a lot of different people. Yes, the majority of the people that you're going to hear from at this free-for-all are focused in real estate, whether it's in active investing in real estate or in passive investing in real estate. But you're gonna hear a lot about real estate. But I just wanted to show you, I do think that in different parts of the cycle, you might want to have more liquidity. And right now might be one of those times. I do think in certain parts of the cycle, cash is king. And I think we're back in that part of the cycle where cash is king. I think active turnkey somewhat proves that, right? Because if you've got cash to buy active turnkeys, you're going to be able to get way better deals than you have if you have to get financing, because financing is going to cost more money, and it's not going to be as good of a deal. If you have cash, it's a way better deal. And if you have cash, the reason why people go belly up, I think there's a lot of reasons for it. But, and I think it starts with the character and the things we already kind of started on, but it's always one reason. That reason is they run out of cash. You know, a lot of times people talk about all the people that crashed in the 2008 crash, and they say, well, it was because of this reason or that reason. But it was and inevitably over leveraging always comes into the conversation. But the problem is, not a single person that went under in the 2008 crash went under because they were over leveraged. They went under because they didn't have enough cash to service that debt. Okay, so that's why cash is important. And as you grow your portfolio, think about a rental property. So even this is a great example, even with our turnkey rental properties, every single property, if you have one property, then I believe you ought to have a certain amount of cash, right? But if you had 10 properties, you probably should have more cash than that one property. So that's why this foundation has to keep getting bigger as you grow your portfolio, as you grow your investments, and as you grow your wealth. Those things ought to be in place. And then secondly, insurance. Jared mentioned it. You know, making sure that you're properly insured with health, with life insurance is a huge, big deal. And anything else that could be a major catastrophe. If you can't self-insure, if you're not a billionaire or like, you know, super wealthy, and it's interesting, the people that have the most insurance are normally the most wealthy. So like, I think we always think to ourselves, you know, like either they think they can't afford insurance, or they think when I'm wealthy, I'll get these insurances. And it's really the opposite. You can't afford not to have good insurance. So insurance, and then liquidity. Building your private money lenders list, I think, is huge. And I'm not sure we've talked about private money on this podcast enough. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about private money. Jared did a good example. And maybe we'll talk about that example. I hope we will on a future podcast where somebody used active turnkey and they bought the house cash from us, but they used a private lender for themselves. And then they actually kind of did the whole Burr method, but with somebody else's money. And they were only into the property $6,000 of their own money by the time they ended up refinancing, and they had used somebody else's money to do the whole deal to begin with. So they started with none of their money into the deal, and they ended up with $6,000 in their deal. And then he ended up selling the property, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later, and made $100,000 plus. And, you know, you can do the math on that, and I guarantee you that is a good enough return. So let's think, Jared. So if you only have $6,000 in the deal and you make $100,000 and maybe $10,000 in, say, 3 years on that $6,000, that's, I don't know, is that good enough? It's solid. Would that be acceptable in the Jared Stoltmeister book?
It would be.
I think so. It's definitely good enough for me. May not be quite good enough for Jared, but it's good enough for me.
I'd take it.
I'll tell you, it's good enough. So, and then I think another place where I think, and this kind of goes back to the Venezuela money as well. And I've already talked about Bitcoin, and I've already talked about cryptocurrency on the whole other end of the spectrum here. But another piece here that is in this cash mode is precious metals. And I think we should have, my precious metal guy in here. And you have to understand, I don't really look at precious metals as an investment. I look at it more like it's the cash piece. It's the protection piece. Because let's just say what if the United States dollar started doing what the Venezuela dollar has done. And I don't know that we're there today, but I know that the dollar has problems. And I know that, we keep printing money, and at some point, if we just keep printing money forever and ever and ever again, we are going to run into some major problem. And the simple thing is for the last thousands, there's never been a currency. That's what you have to understand. There's never been a currency that's lasted forever. The only currency that has lasted since the beginning of time till now is precious metals. Like there is a real finite value that people associate with that. And if Amelia And her family would have just done one simple thing. If they would have taken this cash, maybe a month or two before, Amelia left, and if they would have converted it to gold, okay? If they would have just converted that money to gold, they wouldn't have lost a penny in the valuation of that money. And the best way to look at gold is it doesn't lose its real value, okay? So, the best example I can give is in the 1920s, in the Great Depression, one coin of gold would have bought a really nice, expensive tailored suit. Okay. And today, and back then, I think it was worth like $40 or something like that. That's what a really expensive, nice suit would have cost. And today, it's about $1,600 for gold, $1,680, $1,690, somewhere in that range is what gold was last time I checked it. And today, that's about what it costs for a really nice, expensive, tailored suit. So you don't really lose, you don't have to worry about, yes, there's some volatility as compared to maybe the dollar, but it's the dollar that's volatile. There's a whole reason why we say things like be on the gold standard. We used to be on the gold standard, right? Like the gold standard is a real thing. Now, there's a bunch of other things that you can get into, and I'm not going to get into that, but I do believe that gold and precious metals should be part. And maybe it's not a huge part. Maybe it's not, 30, 40, 50% of your portfolio. But I believe maybe 5%. I think that is a very great type of, number to associate. But then on the flip side, I think our legacy investments, we ought to be thinking about a super low number as well. I'm not comfortable with more than 5% of my wealth in some kind of, in those, what I want to call is at risk. So if I believe my money is really truly at risk and it can be wiped out and go to zero, I only have a small portion of my entire portfolio in those legacy investments. So in this basic line here, this foundation of our wealth, we need to have cash. And as we grow our wealth, have other assets that are maybe active investments or passive investments, we need to continually grow our cash reserves, right? And then we need to have protection, having proper insurance and having proper things in place, that the what ifs. And then having liquidity being, maybe you have equity in properties that you can grab. Maybe you have a HELOC. Maybe you have access to private money or private lenders. You have good credit. All these things are a good way to be able to have your foundation of your wealth. And then I talked about, and then I kind of went through the pyramid. And the next thing after that is active income. It's active investments. And for a lot of the people that were here, their active investments might be their own rentals that they manage. It might be their own business. A lot of people have their own business. A lot of you that are listening have your own business, or you work in a job that pays a lot. So that's kind of your active investment. It took you a little bit of time to invest. Maybe you had to go to school, to be an accountant or a lawyer, or a dentist or a doctor or an engineer or a computer engineer or whatever it is that you are. You had to invest that time. And I kind of talked about each one of these levels have some investment of money and investment of time that you have to get that knowledge and to kind of become that active investor. And so some people can go right from that active. And a lot of times the problem is unless you listen to the Active Turnkey podcast, or unless you're one of those people that understand how to transition from that active income to this passive investing where somebody else manages, but a lot of people never make it past that. So I think you guys listening to this is awesome. You're investing right now. I think in that passive section. So really, I first of all want to make sure everybody knows that that's what this is. Like turnkey rentals. Lending money to maybe Olsen Group, investing in funds. That's that passive income that everybody really wants to try to get to at some way, shape, or form. At some point in their life, they want to get to the point where those passive investments have paid off, and those passive investments are able to pay for their lifestyle. So they don't really have to work in order to be able to pay for their lifestyle. So that next segment is active investments. Like I said, this can be your job. This can be active investments that you're managing. I know for us, I can tell you our short-term rental portfolio, we've got 22 short-term rentals right now, me and Becky, and that's an active business. It's active. So although you might think it's passive, it's not, trust me. It's very active. All of the businesses that we run here are active businesses. Your business is an active business. Your job is an active activity that you're using to be able to make money. And then at some point, once you make enough money, and I think you should always be learning these even when you're young, even when you're like 19, 20 years old. You should be learning active investing. You should be learning this next one, which is tax. Tax is probably the one thing that will, it's the number one killer of your wealth as you grow. If you think about it, if you never had to pay a penny of tax for your entire life, like how much more money would you have to invest? If you were to be able to invest all the money that you pay in taxes, how much more money would you have? It's just, the numbers are staggering. If you just start, if somebody makes $100,000 and pays $35,000, $40,000 in tax every year, if they were to be able to take that money every year and invest it throughout their, even if they only made like 8%, it would be in the million, probably in the tens of millions of dollars that they would have by the time they retired. So learning tax, and tax is kind of broken up into several different things. You know, first with real estate, we've got some great advantages with real estate. You know, we've got depreciation. We also have the ability to pass on our assets to our kids and have a stepped up basis. We can also invest with self-directed IRAs. And if you don't know the self-directed world, you need to learn it. We probably should have some people from Quest on this podcast as well to try to, you know, get our audience engaged with self-directed IRA investing or self-directed 401k or SEP or ESAs or health savings accounts, all those things you can self-direct. But also understanding the 1031 exchange rules, if that's something that's good for you. Once you get into larger projects, there is a way that you can, you know, depreciate more in the first couple of years with accelerated depreciation. That can also help reduce the amount of money that you pay in taxes right now. Also, just people that have a W-2 job, you can, you know, invest in your 401k and get tax deferral. So all these things are things that we need to learn how to invest in a way, and how to move our money, and how to have certain machines in our investing world and our wealth building world that will help us save money on tax over the short term and over the long haul. And then finally on tax, like something that I have learned recently is how to be able to do actual investments that are tax advantaged investments. So there are ways, just so you guys know, everybody that talks about turnkeys talks about the whole 1031 exchange thing. But there are other ways, just so you know, there are other ways that you can make investments. And again, I'm not a tax accountant. I'm just telling you what I've done, and I've seen it. There are ways that you can make other tax advantaged investments in which you can wipe out all the tax that you would have ended up paying by doing other passive investments and other active investments as well. So learning tax is that next line, and then passive investing, which is really where we come in with the Active Turnkey podcast, with turnkey investing, with maybe investing in syndications, with multifamily, with self-storage, with land development, whatever it is that you're doing. Investing in funds, investing in, you know, a lot of other things that we could bring to the conversation. But that's that passive. And that's kind of at the top. That is really like it's the second to the top part of the I want to call it triangle, but Jared calls it a pyramid. You know, pyramid. Like the Egyptians pyramids there. Yep. Walk like an Egyptian. Yep.
There you go.
Walk like an Egyptian. And then you kind of get to those legacy investments, and at some point trying to figure out, how do I invest time and money and focus on maybe putting my assets and my wealth into a trust or into some kind of a vehicle to be able to pass on. That's part of it. But also those investments that you know are not always going to pan out. Those investments that you're okay losing some money. It's at-risk capital. You know, I know a lot of times people do venture capital investments, and they might invest in 10 companies, and their hope is not that all of them succeed. Their hope is that one of them succeeds. And if the one succeeds, they'll, you know, multiply their money for all 10 investments by 100 if just the one succeeds. Those shouldn't be, though. Those are not our foundation. I just want to make sure that people understand, like, those are not the foundation of investments. And it really all goes back to cash. It goes back to protection. It goes back to liquidity. And then finally, I also wanted to bring the conversation of precious metals in there as well. So if you're not investing in precious metals, if you don't have the proper insurance, proper life insurance, proper health insurance, proper whatever insurance that you believe that you should have, make sure you focus on that piece. If you don't have cash, like, build up those cash reserves. This is a great time to have cash. There's going to be so much more money being made over the next 2 years than may ever be made in our lifetime. I mean, really, honestly, we are in recession, whether you guys like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not. We're in recession. You can't change the definition of it. It's still a recession. And a pretty funny question, I shouldn't say funny, but a good question got asked at our meeting. Like, how do you know when things are going bad right now? And right now, the only thing that hasn't turned bad or hasn't turned negative is employment. If employment numbers change, like everything that we've been saying for the last 2 or 3 years, hey, check for interest rates, okay? That's the number one thing we said. Guess what, guys? Interest rates have already been here. Number 2 thing we said is watch construction permits. Guess what? Construction permits have already plummeted. Yes, there's some parts of the country that permits are still up. That always happens, guys. So Florida, permits are up, okay? Texas, permits are pretty flat. They're still like, the Southeast, permits are, but the rest of the country, I'm telling you, the Northeast, permits are way down. The West, permits are way down. So that's number 2 thing that we've been saying for years to look on when the economy is going to be in bad shape. The number 3 thing that we've said over the last couple of years to pay attention to is inventory, and we're seeing inventory rise very, very quickly right now. And then the next thing is days on market. So how long does that house actually take to sell? We're in our market. We're already back to a normal market here. We're not a buyer's market, not a seller's market. It's a very normal market. And you know how I know that is one of our investors had a house for sale listed, and it was listed on the MLS for about 60 days, right? No offers. And then all of a sudden they get 2 offers in the same day. Like, that tells me it's a normal market. That normally happens. I don't know how it happens. I can't force it to happen. I wish one of those buyers would have just came a month beforehand or whatever. But I just wanted to kind of just take some time and back out today. Back out of talking about turnkey investing and kind of focus on the big picture of your investment world and of your wealth building world. Another tip I would give everybody is to track it. I've got a little sheet on my phone. And me and my wife talk about it, about every couple months or so. We'll kind of review it and kind of go over it. And I mean, I have every little thing on there. I've got how much cash value is in my life insurance. I've got how much cash I have in my personal account. I've got how much money and how much investments are in my self-directed accounts and in those like retirement accounts. I've got how much money, and I have one investment company, and that investment company is the only thing I kind of talk about for me and my wife, and how much cash we have in that company, how much equity we have in the homes in that company, and then little things like maybe like we own a car outright, and it's probably worth X amount of dollars. Like so we know that we could sell that car and make that much money for it. We also have a second home that's got a good amount of equity in that home. Any real equity that you might have in your own home, you can probably add to that. So just kind of creating like a wealth sheet for yourself. Maybe it's a spreadsheet for you. Maybe it's just a pen and paper. Maybe it's on a notepad like it is for me. And I've got about 50 things that are listed. I give personal notes out to some people, like my brother. I loaned him some money for a car, and it's not a lot of money, but it's on that sheet. So I would encourage everybody to start a wealth building sheet and start like tracking it and start looking at it because I believe firmly in whatever you focus on expands, like it always does. Like, and you always figure out a way to move that needle when you're focused on moving that needle. So and then kind of just like making sure we're building this responsibly. Build your portfolio responsibly. Don't just buy 50 turnkey rentals. And I know maybe you're on the fence of whether I should buy or whether I shouldn't. And I'm putting you over the edge right now to say, no, maybe I should just step back and maybe I should keep that 50 grand in cash that I might have put out. And but because you probably should, you might want to. Right now is a great time to have cash. I believe the next 2 years are going to be ripe with some amazing investments that we're already seeing them, and we're taking advantage of them. I'm telling you, like we are taking advantage of them. We're going to be able to bring deals to you guys we haven't been able to bring in several years. And we can already see the writing on the wall. We're in the market. We're in the trenches day to day. We know that people's properties are worth already way less than what they think they're worth because of inflation. It's weird because inflation in how much something costs. So the houses cost more now, right? But the prices are lower, okay? Because they're higher interest rates. So, and hey, if you want my real opinion, on interest rates, I think the Fed is gonna at some point figure out that they've cranked on too hard and have to kind of move in the other direction. I don't think they have the guts personally to stay on this course. And I don't know what that's going to bring. It might be a bad thing for the United States long term, but that's kind of what I believe in the short term. But having cash, having protection, liquidity, precious metals, all those things in that bottom savings bucket, focusing on making as much money as you possibly can in those active investments, and then kind of making sure that you understand tax and taking advantage of as many tax breaks and as tax preferred investments as you possibly can, focusing on as much passive income as you can, but keeping it in those lines where every time you're making another passive investment, maybe you're also trying to widen, that bottom net that you have. And then finally, having some fun. I am not against you guys going out and buying crypto. I'm not, especially now. I think actually crypto's at that point where, there's going to be some big winners over the next year or so. And you might Bitcoin right now is around $20,000, and everybody's that I've been talking to that are experts say that buy zone is between 11,000 and 18,000. So we're really close to that buy zone right now, and if you believe in that technology, maybe that's something that you're thinking about, but you shouldn't be doing it with money that really should be allocated to your cash bucket, or really should be allocated to your active investing, or should be allocated to your tax advantaged investments, or should be allocated to your passive investments. Because that's not one of those investments. That is an at-risk investment. You need to understand and make sure that you're okay losing that money if you go down that trail. So that's really all I got to talk about today, Jared. I just thought it was funny. She brought this money into our employee here, Amelia's been talking about this pile of cash that she has, and we didn't quite believe her. She said, "Hey, no, it's worth less than a penny." This huge pile of cash here. If you're listening, I know you can't see this. Maybe you can hear it. It's a big wad of cash. This was like $100 bills, Jared.
We're going to town.
I might need an armored car
coming
out of here.
It's true.
It's worth less than a penny today. If they would have had gold, though, I should ask. I should try to figure out the exact dollar amount, and maybe we can come back with that story. But if they would have had gold, I believe this probably that gold would. I think it was about a half an ounce of gold. That, if I remember correctly, the time frame and how much cash she actually had. So a half an ounce of gold would have been worth $800 today, and she would have never lost any of that. Think about that. Yeah. Think about $800 turning into a penny. That's what happens if your country's currency isn't doing the right thing. That's and it's what's even more interesting about Venezuela right now, Jared. They've got so much oil that if they knew what to do with it, they could be a superpower today. But because they have decided to take the path of socialism, they have decided to take the path of printing so much money, they have decided to take that path. This is what we're left with, and this is why everybody that lives in Venezuela, everybody's trying to move out. Nobody wants to stay there. There's no reason to be there. There's no reason to be. And right now, most people use the dollar there. The dollar is what people look to say, this is what I want. I don't really want this, monopoly money, so to speak. It looks pretty cool. I mean, this looks a lot like the euro. Looks a lot like the British pound, and those are some decent currencies. If this was British pounds, or if this was euro, it would be. I would be happy. I might be going on a vacation right now instead of being here right now.
Sure.
Any final last words, Jared?
No, this is a lot of time and experience for Tom as he's been bringing this to you, and so this is really no motives here. Obviously, there's not a sell here. This is trying to set you up to be able to weather the next couple of years, and also to provide opportunity. One thing that was mentioned during the free for all event was a lot of people have said in the past that, hey, when the time comes, I'm going to be ready.
Yes.
And yet
the only way they're going to be ready is if they've got the cash.
That's right.
And they have the ability to say, hey, it's time to go.
Yep.
Jared, that's a great thing. I'm glad you brought that up. The other thing that you said is that people thought they missed the boat, right? And I think right now people are trying to thinking that maybe I missed the boat. Well, guess what? I don't think so. A whole other boat's coming in right now.
That's right.
And
it's a big one.
To me, I am more in a buying mode now than we've been in years. I feel like the next 2 years is going to be a massive opportunity if you're in the right markets and if you're working with the right people to be able to grow that wealth and to be able to make a real difference for you, your family, and your legacy. And for us, me, I want to work to have to give. I want to be able to pass this on to my family, yes, but I want to be able to help as many people as I possibly can with the wealth that I build.
So some of you hearing this, you may be thinking, that's exactly what I need to hear. I think I need to start making sure I have my stuff in order. And other people are like, I think I'm in good shape. I'm ready to get going. We do help people. We do build rental portfolios for folios.
We build rental portfolios for investors.
Thank you.
It says it right there. Building rental portfolios for investors.
Yeah. So we do that. We assist investors. So if you are looking for an investment, you can reach out to us. You can go directly to our website at buyolsongroup.com, or you can reach me. And my personal email is jared@buyolsongroup.com. And if it's your first time, we can have a phone call and we can discuss your goals and how we can help you get there. And if this has brought you value, we certainly would appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up, a like, share.
Tell your friends and family about us.
5 stars, whatever it is that
we don't want 4 stars.
5 stars, whatever it is, whatever's good. So let us know that way, and we appreciate you joining us.
Yes. So Active Turnkey,
the best way to buy rentals.
God bless.
See you guys.
Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.